unadjourned.
Apologies for early departure or for leaving on time.
Okay, so the information is there. It's not a lot of reading to do. I'm assuming people have seen it. And in that time, I've been given further legal advice that we can use Standing Orders 18.2. Procedure if no resolution is reached. If no resolution is reached, the chairperson may accept a new motion to progress the matter under discussion, which I'm going to do from the chair. We have a motion here, which I'm intending to move. Do I have a seconder? Melanie, did you second the last one? Jen. Do I have a seconder? Hen, thank you. So if there are any questions on the new information, I'm happy to take those. Andrew?
Yeah, I've got two questions.
We have staff at the...
One of which is on the new information, and the other is on the presentation of information as regards the answers to previous questions. So the impact on rates between 0.28% and 0.66% impact on rates is a one-off requirement for this option. That appears to be different than the answer that was provided to my question earlier in the meeting, where I would have expected the impact on rates to be the same as for option 1. Clearly that's not the case from the way the information is presented in this matrix. Why is that?
Originally, for option 1, it was a 0.28% offset when it was first reported. So we used that figure as the lower bound for option 4, and the higher bound for option 4 was what we've got for option 2. So this has not been recalculated. We went upstairs and had a thumbs up and came up with that.
So we wouldn't be using the offset provided in FY20 to 21 through existing capital works provision for the inner city project for the amount up to 1.458 million for option 4. We would be looking at it differently than we are for option 1.
What do you reckon, Ross?
Yes.
Why is that?
From funding point of view, we could look at the same option for funding it exactly the same. So there's no reason that the two would cost any different, except if the second option cost more, obviously you would have to offset. If we wanted then to recover that money, we would put it as part of the LTP. And we've asked in the option, I think with any of the options, you would actually recommend the identified offsets and the funding impact. So if you went to option 1, 2 or 3 or 4, you would still look at option or the resolution 3 around looking at offsets of that funding impact. If you wanted to fund it 100% out of rates, that's what it would cost you, between 0.28 and 6. But we are recommending an offset.
All of that is interesting, but what I'm asking is about the way that the information is presented in this table. Yeah. If the reality is that option 1 and option 4 are able to be funded in the same way with any incremental cost for option 4 having an impact on rates, I would have expected it to be presented in this table in that way, and it's not.
Right. It should read anything above 1.4 whatever is million will have this much impact.
Unless you want to increase the offset against that project, which has got 4 million in it for the Central City. Central City project at this point's got 4 million in it. We are suggesting this be an offset of part of that money to actually fund that option. You could actually decide to offset that more. If you didn't, if you did it exactly the same as option 1, it would actually have no impact on rates except of any additional cost. So that extra 1.4 would cost you 2.66 minus 0.28.
So the answer to my question then is that option 1 and option 4 could in fact be the same, but with any increment in option 4 seeing a rate impact.
Yes, or a bigger offset against that capital.
So there's actually some optionality within that.
Correct.
Okay. And then my second question relates to the answer to my earlier question, impact on Mana Whenua. We're showing increased protection of Kaimoana from the landfill, potential disturbance of the foreshore habitat as a negative, but there's no mention of the commentary that was made in the answer to my previous question around the introduction of foreign materials into the environment? Presumably, the answer to that question still stands, although it's not noted under that box in option 4 in this table.
Possibly one of the we talk about the issue about the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement, and in the detail of the report we talked around that hard options are not generally allowed under the Coastal Policy Statement. That Coastal Policy Statement is a national policy statement of which Ngātahu, basically we've got a buy-in from a whole range of stakeholders. If we were going to go against the recommendations of that, that would open up a whole range of things. And part of that, you'll recognise, is introduction of foreign materials into that environment. Basically, the Coastal Policy Statement is recommending soft options or retreat.
Okay, so you could have copied and pasted that into that box as well.
Yeah, no, it's just good to know that, you know, despite it's not in the table, that answer still stands. The fact that it's not there shouldn't be read as meaning that that advice is no longer relevant. All right, thank you.
No questions? Anne, then James.
Please, Madam Chair, say if this is not relevant to the new information, but it would be useful to have a sense of how the lifespan of these different projects. We've heard some different numbers around 50 years for the steel pillar one, the steel wall one, and 25 years and 15 years. Would it be possible to get clarification from staff about that, in terms of the different options and how long they'll last?
Yep. So for option 1, and based on, as we had mentioned, with the oxidation ponds, with that work being enacted in 1995 and still in good condition, we would say a minimum of 25 years for that work. And yes, we have had, as reported, that 50 years would be the expectancy for the option 2.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions? James.
Look, I want something done, but I wanted a robust report on what the options. A robust report on what the options are, and I struggle with this because this has been put together, admittedly quickly because of what happened a couple of hours ago, but it seems to be a particularly negative view of option 4. Now, and Councillor Turner pointed that out about the fact that it mentions that there's an impact on rates, but it's no different to option 1. So there's one example. Another is the impact on mana whenua, and it talks about the same impact as option 1, which is increased protection of kai moana. But then with option 4, it says potential, this is the additional thing, potential disturbance of foreshore habitat. Sure, but that applies to option 1 as well. So it just seems like it's a particularly negative view of option 4. I don't believe it. I don't feel that it's been presented in a I'll call it a robust manner. That's all. And now I say I want something done, but I wanted to make a decision with proper and valid information in there. And I'll go to what Councillor Galloway's just mentioned about the lifespan of this intervention, because at one stage today we had 5 to 10 years, and then it became 25, and I don't see the relevance, and I'm not an engineer obviously, but just common sense says the fact that the oxidation ponds have had sheet piling which has lasted for 25 years, so therefore this would last for that time. This is a different environment, this is a different situation. I mean, they don't have tides in the oxidation ponds, so I struggle with the report that's put in front of us.
I don't think the ponds have got sheet piling.
Huh?
The ponds don't have sheet piling.
There is sheet piling in the oxidation ponds.
You're getting mixed up. So
No, they have sheet piling in the oxidation ponds. They do. I think you'll find that they do. But anyway, moot. my point is that this report seems to, as I say, be particularly negative towards option 4, but I do want something done. That's been my whole issue today.
Okay, Jimmy?
I also review this new chart, on page 7, number 10. I was confused. Yeah. The first one is regarding to the impact on rates. Even James and Andrew mentioned that one should be in the equally, to assessment. If option 1, no any the rate impact because offset from the central city, existing capital 1. Why the option 4 is not allowed? Should be in the same equally, can offset this one. And the second is environment impact here blank. Because the peers will debate, will review based on the staff mentioned. The option 4, if you have seat, those the piling should be more or less will impact environment, but in here it's blank, no mention. So we just don't know whether it's impact those the environment or not. This is my question.
Look, I can only comment on the previous, what we had with the attachment, with the environmental impacts was in that previous attachment with the previous report. So that should have some content in there, as there is some. Should have been in there. And going back to, and it's been discussed too, yes, with option 4, the first part of that could be an offset, so it wouldn't necessarily have to be that first part directly from rates. So this has obviously been put together very quickly, and those are noted as that they could be, that could have been included.
So, look, committee members, this can continue on and on and on, and I'm going to take what James has expressed, Councillor Daniels has expressed, that you still don't feel that the report is robust around option 4. So what I'd like to do is lay this on the table again. I would like to come back with a more robust information around option 4, answering the very questions that people have put, and also addressing the omissions and the incorrect data that you've put in there.
Point of order, it's
Questions?
already been moved and seconded.
Yes, so what?
Excuse me.
Do I have to put it? I don't know.
Pauline, could I just, to break the ice, could I just say that I am actually going to go for option 1, but I do want to talk and debate about it.
Well, James, what do you...
I'm the same.
Okay.
Okay. But what I want to know is, what is the motion? Is it up there? Because originally it was
Yes.
to revoke.
No, we don't. We're using 18.2.
Yeah, okay, so it's that.
Yep.
Can I just have a minute, Megan? Yeah.
Okay, I'll start.
No, we're going to put the resolution.
Incorrect, we can address it later. All right, so it's moved and seconded. We're going to proceed.
All right.
Hang on, I haven't answered you yet.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, you can be first speaker.
Okay, all right. Look, I've made my point about how we got to this point, this place, and I want something done. So I'm prepared to support this.
Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you. So here's the thing. Staff did exactly what the resolution of the committee asked them to do. The report be left on the table while staff investigate other options, including sheep piling. If the committee is keen for a new report and a new technical thing to come back, then they actually need to specify that in the resolution. Staff did what they were asked to do. And on top of that, this agenda has been on our laptops and in the public for 5 days, and this is the first agendaed meeting of the week, and people who wanted further information, further technical information, have had 5 days to give staff time to prepare that. For me, there's enough information, there's enough technical information, there's enough staff expertise, and having been on the Infrastructure, Transport and Environment Committee in the last term and on council, I know that the estuary edge stuff is really difficult and that our staff know what they're doing in this space. The additional information has been good. The questions, the staff answers to questions today has been incredibly useful, and that's what they're there for. Even if the information isn't in the report fully, staff are here to provide additional information for us. So if you think that the information is okay, but you don't, and option 1 makes sense, but you don't like the process by which we got to it, then please, to move this forward, just simply abstain rather than vote against it, and let's get on with protecting the estuary.
Andrew?
In a similar vein, I reiterate the comments I made earlier. I've got enough information in front of me. My comments around, and I had enough information in front of me earlier, my comments around environmental, ecological and cultural values still stand, and all of the comments I made earlier absolutely still stand. But where this has landed demonstrates the implication of people voting against something that they don't necessarily actually oppose, and voting against something where in fact an abstention may be more appropriate, or in fact where an amendment asking for further information might be more appropriate, or an amendment asking, in this case, for another option to be considered might have been more appropriate. And of course, none of that happened. I don't for 1 minute think that many of those people that voted against this actually intended to vote to do nothing and to leave things exactly the way that they are, but a lack of consideration of the impact of those negative votes resulted in what I would consider to be, and I hope others would agree with me, an unintended outcome where we actually agreed just to leave things the way that they are at the moment, which I think all of us would agree is untenable. So there's been a lesson around process, I think, here as well. There's been a lesson around the use of amendments, the use of abstentions, and in fact the use of requests for information, further information, either during or probably with more relevance here before, as Councillor Templeton has said, before the meeting, so that we can have a reasoned debate with all the information in front of us, and people are actually putting up, by way of resolution, what it is they're wanting to achieve. So we got to do nothing. I don't think there's anybody around this table that actually wanted us to do nothing. So I'm pleased that we've found a way through this, and I would commend the work that the Chair and staff have done to get us to a point where we can do something other than nothing. I would reiterate what I said in the earlier debate. We should just support the option that's in front of us, get on with this, and avoid environmental, ecological and cultural degradation, which is what we're looking at with the way things are at the moment.
Right, thank you. Well, we've had 3 people speak for it, and I'm not going to stop anyone speaking, but if anyone's speaking for it, please don't reiterate your past debate. We don't need to hear it all again. And so I will now invite, I'm not saying that you did, Andrew, what you said was good. I just really want to get this wrapped up. Melanie?
The only thing I was going to say is actually the further information in a way made it more confusing, which is what Andrew has said, and I'm a bit disappointed by that, but I still support option 1 because it's clearly the obvious solution.
Thank you. Sam?
Yeah, I will still be opposing it. In my view, we haven't done enough work on option 4, so I won't reiterate anything I said previously, but I do think there's more efficiency that could have been gained within that option, and we haven't done the work, so I can't support it.
Right, thank you. Phil, Aaron, Tim, then Jimmy.
Yeah, I won't be supporting it. You can't just add on option. Option 4 has been painted to be an expensive option. It is the best option, and just adding the sheet piling and option 1 together to come up with that 2.4 million is not correct. There is a lot of savings that can be done. We'd end up with the same outcome, but a lot better, longer lasting outcome if we did option 4.
Thank you. Aaron?
Yeah, for a council that loves to normally get process right, and I've heard that lots of times over a particular intersection in the city, For this to turn out this way today is interesting, and some of the claims that have been made and around the debate, and some of my fellow councillors getting told off as well in those debates is interesting as well. I won't be supporting this again. I don't think it's the best option. Option 1 is, yes, it's the cheapest, but does it have the best outcome of all the things that Andrew listed? I totally agree with Andrew on all the points he did list, and therefore wish we were exploring the more permanent, the more beneficial one for the containment and of the area. If we get a run of storms or whatever may happen in that area, and we get rubbish wash into the estuary, this council will be kicking itself and really, really embarrassed that we did not go down the route of going for the better option. Yes, I love to save money, but if there's a better environmental impact and longer term, you often save money, because when you do the patch-up job, yes, it will contain it, as we've been told, or it should contain it, but there's no guarantees because it doesn't last as long. And the point that Councillor Daniels raised earlier about the oxidation ponds, completely different environment. That's like buying a car and letting your teenager drive it for 20 years, probably not a teenager anymore, or buying the same car and putting it in the garage. They're completely different environments. Don't expect to have the same car at the end of 20 years. And having waves and storm surges and floods coming out through the rivers and everything else on an estuary edge versus an oxidation pond, we don't normally get those in there. We get the odd earthquake, but that's about it. It's Christchurch.
Thanks, Aaron. Tim?
Thank you. Look, I have to say this has totally been disappointing. The options, the way we got here has just been pretty sad, really, and I didn't really appreciate the way that and technically, I suppose you could say, the patronising way it implied my ignorance of the situation. The fact of the matter is I'm fully aware of the need to do this and the damage around the estuary, but it was an undertaking, or it was made by staff, and I don't believe it was fully followed. And I think we've got to be really careful, because I don't know, really, if adding an extra column changes anything. It really hasn't, let's be honest. Option 4, just an column. I will be supporting this because I'm fully aware of the importance of this. I don't think we're going to go anywhere if we keep debating it, but I'm just really disappointed in the process.
Thank you. Jimmy?
Okay. Yeah, I'm still prefer the option 4, because we support option 4, particular we got the information. If we go with the steel, the cedar piling, actually they will contaminate, our environment, even those ecological one, and also regarding the visual amenity. But now we put on the option 4 in here. It's kind of combined together. I don't know, combined together, those the environment impact still will be exist in there. So it's my particular concern. Yeah, but I'm a little bit worried because the staff mentioned there's a blank, but anyway, staff explained to us those the environment impact still exist if we go to option 4, still as said piling. So I'm still prefer the option 1. Thank you.
Oh, so option 1. Thank you. Oh. Hen.
To say things. Yeah.
Yes.
Option 1. Yeah.
It's cool. We got it clarified at the end.
Yep.
Thank
All
you,
good.
Jimmy. That's fine. That's all right. Anyone supporting option 6? Let me know. Anne.
Oh, okay, I will say. As Councillor Keown has alluded to, this is an incredibly complex situation, and which is why I won't be supporting option 4, because it's a more expensive one. It's one-dimensional solution to a multi-dimensional environment. It flies in the face of expert opinions from many fields, and it does not align with our council plans and policies. So I will not be supporting option 4. I will be supporting option 1.
Thank you. And Mike.
Thank you. I guess one thing to point out is option 4 has never actually been moved. We're only debating option 1. And look, I'd like to acknowledge obviously the debate we have had, and it's obviously taken a bit of time to get here, and it's good that we're going to get an outcome. And look, I respect all the thoughts and opinions of my colleagues, and I do appreciate the fact that a number of them have actually decided to support this option, because actually the do nothing approach is actually a really bad approach that could have some terrible outcomes. And look, I think we're probably going to disagree about what the best way forward. I know the last time this came to the committee, we did discuss option 1 versus option 2, because there was a number of us at the start that actually did support option 2, but we actually, through questioning and answers with staff, we realised that option 1 was the best way to actually move forward with that environment. So once again, I'll be supporting option 1.
Jake?
Sure. Well, I was really disappointed with the work that had gone into investigating option 4, but I was prepared to move my vote in favour, because doing nothing and the potential environmental impacts of that is an untenable solution from my point of view. But given the numbers aren't here to stop that, I will maintain my true intention, which is to again abstain.
Right, okay, thank you. Well, if that's the end of the debate, I'll just round it off by saying yes, I agree with Mike, and thanks for pointing that out. It has been a very robust debate and discussion. We have learnt something today about being very careful about the resolutions that we make and the instructions that we do give staff to go away and do. And thank you, Dave, for acknowledging that it was a two-way street. We weren't clear enough with the resolution, and the information came back, and as a result wasn't quite what we wanted. But it is important, as many people have said, that we do not do nothing, that we need to address this issue urgently. I believe that the environmental impacts are to the fore here. I don't think that option 4 would fly, no matter how much more information we got. I just will not go through all those barriers, as Sarah Templeton pointed out, around the preciousness of the estuary. And we've got several very active groups down there. It could be a prolonged application in a court of law, so to try and get a resource consent, and even then it may not be granted, and that's what we learnt last meeting on this. Without further ado, I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Please put your hands up for opposed.
Division, please.
Division. And Jake's abstaining.
Councillor Turner?
Yes.
Councillor Chen?
Yes.
Councillor Coco?
Yes.
Councillor Cotter?
Yes.
Councillor Daniels?
Yes.
Councillor Davidson?
Yes.
Councillor Galloway?
Yes.
Councillor Keown?
No.
Councillor McDonald?
No.
Councillor Major?
No.
Councillor McLeod? Councillor Scandrick?
Yes.
Councillor Templeton? 9 for, 3 against, 1 abstention.
So that's carried. Thanks, everybody. That's been incredible. So that's the end of our agenda. I'll close. Do I close the meeting first, or do you do that first? Karakia, huh? Karakia, James, to close the meeting. Thank you.
I'm going to paraphrase that. What I'm about to say is, finally, we've finished speaking. And now, I'm going to say this to Te Reo Māori, and now we can reunite and think of our city as a whole. So, having said that, ka whakairia te tapu, kia waitea ai te ara, kia tūruki whakataa ai, kia tūruki whakataa ai, haumie, huie,
Tai kia. Kia ora. Meeting closed. And I'm sorry it wasn't as quick as the Finance and Performance meeting, but well done, everybody. Yeah, close. It was close.